Every year, thousands of people go missing without a trace, never to be seen or heard from again. While some of these cases seem to indicate that they simply left of their own accord, others contain evidence of foul play, making it even more imperative that they be found as quickly as possible. Number 10. A $5,000 reward is being offered for information leading to the whereabouts of 43-year-old Camden Algier, who's been missing since December of 2025. But despite the cash reward, no witnesses have come forward with any useful tips. Camden's case started on the 19th of December that year. The last time that anybody saw him was at his house, which is located in New Madrid, Missouri, specifically the 500 block of Mott Street. At first, his absence from home didn't cause his family too much concern, since Camden is known to often go on long walks along the Mississippi River. But when he failed to return as planned, his loved ones became concerned and contacted the authorities. Searches around his home in the areas where he usually walks were conducted, but his family and police officers found no sign of him. His family states that Camden suffers from a certain condition that could put him at risk if he isn't found soon, but they've declined to reveal the exact nature of that condition. Sources don't state whether he had a cell phone with him when he went for his walk that day, and so it remains unknown whether efforts were made to track him that way. Whatever the case may be, the police consider him to be at risk, whether foul play was involved in his disappearance or not. When all efforts to locate Camden failed, the Madrid County Sheriff's Department released a statement about his case and stated that they needed the public's help in tracking him down so that he could be brought home safely. A map of New Madrid was released to the public, and on it, investigators highlighted the area in which they believe Camden could be found. They've suggested that he might have looked for shelter in an outbuilding, such as someone's shed. Hence, they've asked that residents in this area check their outbuildings and report anything unusual they might find. They've also been asked to check their security cameras in case someone has footage of Camden's last movements before he went missing. Since he's used to walking, he may have traveled far since that day that he went missing, and without any useful clues or sightings being reported, investigators are at a loss as to what direction he walked in. It also isn't known whether he had any plans to visit family in another area, or if he simply got lost while out on his walk. Though this seems unlikely since Camden is very well acquainted with the area. His family has stated that with every passing day, they grow more concerned for his well-being, since he might be at the mercy of the elements and he could be struggling to make his way home on his own. If you have any idea where Camden might be or what direction he traveled in, you're asked to contact the New Madrid Police Department at 573-748-5901. Number 9. The name of missing man, 28-year-old Sam Beal, might sound familiar to a lot of people, which is understandable since he used to be a quarterback for the New York Giants football team. His disappearance has left his friends, family, and fans with many unanswered questions, since some of the details in his case are truly bizarre. Sam played for the Giants for 3 seasons after he was selected in the 3rd round of the 2018 NFL Supplemental Draft. He was seen as an asset to the team, but he opted out of the 2020 season due to the pandemic, and in 2021 he was released by the Giants. He was last seen in Caledonia, Michigan on the 12th of July, 2025. It's believed that the last person to see him before he vanished was his girlfriend, who he dropped off at her family's house on the day in question. At the time, he was employed at an Amazon facility in Kentwood, and before dropping his girlfriend off, he asked if he could borrow her car. When they parted ways, she was under the impression that he was on his way to work his shift, but then the case took an inexplicable turn. Instead of driving to Kentwood, Sam traveled to Virginia Beach. He would later contact his girlfriend and admit that he'd shrugged off work that day, but he assured her that he was about to start driving home. But he never arrived, and none of his friends and family have been able to make contact with him since. His loved ones became concerned and decided to travel to Virginia Beach to look for him. And there, they found the vehicle in question, but it had been abandoned, and the only clues that were found were Sam's shoes and socks that had been left on the floor in front of the passenger seat, along with what appeared to be beach sand and a parking stub. The stub showed that he'd been on the beach on the 13th of July, and that he left there at 5:59 p.m. on the day of his disappearance, since that was the time that he paid for his parking at the beach. It's known that he still has his bank cards with him, since they weren't found in the vehicle, but his bank accounts have not seen any activity since the day that he went missing. Strangely, an app on his girlfriend's phone indicated that he was in Pennsylvania at some point, but Sam denied this when she asked him what he was doing there. Thanks to a miscommunication between Sam's mother and his parole officer, 2 weeks passed before his girlfriend reported him as missing. His mother believed that the officer had spoken to Sam on Monday, the 14th of July, but it would later come to light that he meant he last had contact with him on Monday, the 7th. It's now been revealed that Sam was struggling with his mental health after leaving the NFL, and that he was taking medication, but he stopped taking that medication shortly before his disappearance, since he didn't like the way it made him feel. Anyone who has information on where he might be is urged to contact the Kentwood Police Department at 616-698-6580. Number 8. The family of 38-year-old Thomas Collins has asked for the public's help in locating him, since they've been unable to find out where he went or what might have happened to him since he was last seen. Thomas, who's better known to his friends and family as Duncan, is known to have visited the Old Bull Market in Corinth, Mississippi, on the morning of the 7th of January, 2025, since he was seen there by several witnesses. CCTV footage of the market, which is located close to Highway 3107 West, also provided investigators with some insight into his last movements, but despite this, it remains unknown where he went after leaving the area. The footage shows him walking around the market at around 5:40 a.m. that morning, and a clerk at one of the stores recalled having a conversation with Duncan. The clerk noticed that he wasn't wearing any warm clothing, and since it was very cold out, asked if he'd like a coat, and Duncan accepted the offer. He also gave him a black t-shirt with a yellow print and a can of soda. Duncan remained in the store for the next 10 minutes or so while his phone was put on charge, but after he left, he hasn't been seen or heard from. The clerk added that Duncan was obviously struggling to stay warm, since he tried to tie the black t-shirt that he was given around his legs. At the time, he was wearing shorts that would have provided him with very little protection against the cold. It's known that he left the area on foot, so investigators believed he couldn't have traveled far by the time he was reported missing, but he's yet to be located more than a year later. Later that same day, Duncan's family became concerned when he failed to show up for a duck hunt that they had organized. He told them that he'd definitely be joining them, and when they were unable to make contact with him, they decided to file a missing person report the next day. During the resulting investigation, it was discovered that he'd spent some time with his girlfriend on the morning of his disappearance. While they were at her house, which is located on Mathis Road, they got into a heated argument, and Duncan decided to leave on foot, leaving his car in her house's driveway. It remains unknown why he decided to walk rather than drive to the store, where he was seen on surveillance footage. But it's been suggested that he needed to clear his head after the argument with his girlfriend. His car has since been recovered from her house, and as expected, it contained no clues as to his current whereabouts. A witness would later come forward to report that they saw someone fitting Duncan's description at around 10:30 on the 7th of January. The man was seen walking in the direction of Pickwick, but it could not be confirmed whether this was really him. Searches of the areas where he was last seen were carried out, but to no avail, and investigators are at a loss as to what happened to Duncan after he left the store that morning. Anyone who spots him, or who has information on his case to share with the police, is asked to contact the Corinth Police Department at 662-286-3377. Number 7. In 2025, 74-year-old Wanda Dyer had been married to her husband David for 46 years, and her sudden and inexplicable disappearance has left him distraught as the police have been unable to figure out what happened to her. Wanda had worked as a librarian for more than 3 decades, having been employed by Watson Library at the University of Kansas and the Kansas City Public Library during her life. At the time of her disappearance, she and David were living in Lawrence, Kansas. The morning of the 21st of March 2025 seemed like any other in the couple's household. They got up at around the same time as they usually did, did their complete morning routine, and started to settle into their day. At around 8:30 a.m., Wanda left the house on foot, leaving a note for David in which she stated that she was planning on walking to a nearby store to pay their AT&T bill. She would likely have walked along 5th and California streets after setting out, but this remains speculation. This was the last time anyone saw Wanda, and when she failed to return home, David became increasingly concerned. He contacted the police to file a missing person report, and an investigation was launched. Her friends and family have not heard from her since that day. In the weeks that followed, they found themselves stricken with worry, since it's known that Wanda is suffering from dementia, and so she'll likely be unable to fend for herself while away from home and on her own. In the months before she went missing, her condition had started to worsen, and this was not the first time that Wanda had gone missing from her home. Just a month earlier, she walked away from the house, and for a few hours her family was worried she'd gone missing, but she eventually arrived at her daughter's house unharmed. After news of her disappearance was made public, a witness contacted the police to report that they'd seen Wanda on 9th and Ohio Streets, specifically at a Bank of America branch in that area. Another witness stated that they'd spotted her in Eudora, Kansas at around 7:15 that same evening. This has led investigators to conclude that she walked away from her house to Eudora, and her family believes that she might be trying to make her way to Kansas City, since she used to live there in the past. While out in town that morning, she might have become confused, and while trying to make her way home, she may have remembered that she lived in Kansas City at one point. Thanks to her condition, she may have forgotten that she now lives in Lawrence, and could be making her way back to her last remembered address. Searches have been carried out in several areas, including Lawrence, Eudora, DeSoto, and Kansas City, but no helpful clues have been found, and hence a silver alert is still active in her case, and any leads will be followed up on. Anyone with information that could lead to Wanda being found should contact the Lawrence, Kansas Police Department at 785-843-0250. Number 6. It's always concerning when someone goes missing while they're dealing with mental health issues. It's almost impossible to determine what they're thinking before they disappeared, or where they're planning to go. So in these types of cases, time is of the essence. This is a major factor in the case of the disappearance of 58-year-old Ishmael Evans, who's not been in touch with his friends or family since the 12th of May, 2025, and his loved ones are concerned that he might be vulnerable on his own. Hence, they've asked that anyone who has seen him contact the authorities, since he needs certain medication that he no doubt does not have access to, since the day that he inexplicably disappeared. Ishmael's issues started on the 11th of May, the day before his disappearance. He'd been drinking, and at some point in the day, his family became concerned about him. They've not revealed why they decided to call the police, but it's been suggested that Ishmael had become aggressive towards them, a story that's bolstered by what happened next. When officers arrived at the family's residence in Tulsa, Oklahoma, they tried to reason with him, but it was clear he was not going to cooperate. He started becoming aggressive towards the officers who had no choice but to detain him. Normally, Ishmael is a calm person who loves nothing more than having fun and making those around him laugh. But on this day, the alcohol that he'd consumed had changed his personality, as it often did, according to his family. And he tried to fight the officers, who had their hands full while placing him in a police vehicle. Ishmael then was transported to the Grand Mental Health Behavioral Center, where they believed he'd be able to relax and sober up before being returned to his family's house. And at first, this seemed like a good idea. The next morning, he'd slept off the effects of the alcohol, and the staff at the center decided that he was fit to be released. But they made a crucial error that left his family stunned, and resulted in them calling for the staff to be held accountable for his disappearance. Ishmael was released without the consent of his guardian, who needed to be present or notified before this decision was made, since he suffers from Wernicke-Korsakoff syndrome, which is often mistaken for dementia. When he didn't return home as scheduled, his family contacted the center to hear where he was, and they were notified that he'd already left hours earlier. For the next few days, his loved ones searched areas in Tulsa in hopes that he'd be located, but to no avail. They then contacted the police, and a missing person investigation was launched. They were informed that Ishmael's condition would only worsen with time, especially without his medication, and the areas around the center were scoured but with no positive result. He remains missing and might be struggling to find his way home. Anyone with information on Ishmael's whereabouts is urged to contact the Tulsa Police Department at 918-596-9143. Number 5. It's remarkable how many missing person cases start after that particular person is seen getting into a car with someone, never to be seen again. Usually, in these types of cases, the person driving the car is located and they can be questioned, but it isn't known whether this was done in the case involving a man named Mark Hicks Sr. Furthermore, Mark's disappearance from New Oxford in Pennsylvania has brought renewed attention to other disappearances that have occurred in the area, and the police are trying to establish whether they're linked in some way. On the 22nd of March, 2025, Mark was known to be at his brother's house in Hanover. He left the house at around 5 a.m., and after he was reported missing, investigators found CCTV footage of Mark walking down Pleasant Street. His movements after that remain a mystery, but a witness would report seeing him getting into a maroon truck, later identified as his ex-girlfriend's, at a 7-Eleven store that's situated close to Kohler Miller Road and Interstate Route 30 that same day. The pair drove off, and Mark has not been seen since. He's failed to make contact with his family, and they're growing ever more desperate to find out what happened to him, though they believe they know what his plans were. It would later come to light that Mark had planned on visiting a female friend in the Hanover area that day, but before he could do so, he seemingly disappeared without a trace. When his friend was asked about his whereabouts, he stated that he was supposed to arrive at her house that afternoon, but he failed to do so, and she assumed that he'd changed his mind about the visit. Unfortunately, Mark does not own a mobile phone, so he could not be tracked that way. But he is in the habit of keeping in touch with his family, and since he's failed to do so, they're concerned that he might have come to harm at the hands of an unknown person. Search efforts have been hampered by the fact that Mark is known to travel around the Hanover area, so he usually doesn't stay in the same spot for very long. This means he may have traveled back to an area that's already been searched, but this is just one theory that's being explored during the investigation. Investigators have contacted the hospitals in the area in case Mark was admitted for medical issues, but that was not the case. They've also searched for him in several homeless shelters and encampments, but he could not be located at any of these either. Sources do not state whether his ex-girlfriend was questioned, since she would have information on his last known whereabouts. Many people have drawn parallels to Mark's case and that of two other men who've gone missing, namely Ben Garrett and Matthew Meredith, but no link has been found at this point. Anyone who can aid in locating Mark is asked to contact the Northern York County Regional Police Department at 717-292-3647. Number 4. Some of the details in the case of the disappearance of 33-year-old Brittany Horton have left the authorities extremely concerned for her well-being. In September of 2025, Brittany was living in Ardmore, Oklahoma, and she was an employee at the Dollar General Store Distribution Center in Ardmore Air Park. It was here that her case started, and the details of which have left her family and investigators baffled. On the 10th of September that year, her fellow employees started to notice that Brittany was acting strangely. They later state she was behaving erratically and that she seemed to be confused and disoriented. They tried to speak to her to find out what was going on, but eventually resorted to calling the police at around 12:30 p.m., when they felt that the situation was out of their control. Officers raced to the scene expecting to find Brittany in an agitated state, but this was not the case. Upon their arrival, they were told that she'd exited the warehouse, which was situated on Peter Wales Road, and she'd run away. Staff at the warehouse stated that she was wearing shorts and a t-shirt, but added they had no idea where she was headed. The officers determined that she'd jumped over a fence to flee, and when they checked that area, they found all of her clothing, which meant that she'd run away from the warehouse in a state of undress. A motorist would later contact the authorities to report that they'd seen a woman fitting Brittany's description walking along State Highway 53 west of the warehouse, and they added that she wasn't wearing any clothes. This immediately and understandably struck them as very strange, and they decided to contact the police. The areas where she was last seen were searched, but to no avail, and Brittany remains missing to this day. Her family has revealed that she needs to take certain medication every day, and that if she goes too long without it, her mental state will quickly deteriorate. Members of the public have asked to report any sightings of her, and several appeals have been made through social media, as well as the media, but to date, no new information has been received as to where she may have traveled. Anyone who can add useful information on Brittany's case should immediately contact the Ardmore Police Department at 580-223-1212. Number 3. Concerns are high for the well-being of 24-year-old Hari Karasani since he disappeared from Denali in Alaska during a time when that area was experiencing extremely low temperatures, and it's feared that he's extremely unprepared for such conditions. Hari hails from India, but at the time of his disappearance, he was studying science in Houston, Texas. He was in the process of obtaining his master's degree when he decided that he wanted to travel to Alaska to do some exploring there. On the 22nd of December, 2025, he told his roommates of his travel plans and assured them that he'd be back in 2 weeks. He planned to make the trip on his own and was supposed to return to Houston on either the 3rd or 4th of January. It's known that Hari made it to Aurora Denali Lodge in Healy, Alaska on the morning of the 23rd of December, and he checked into a room. He remained there until the 30th of December when he checked out, and his movements following this remain unclear. A few of his friends would tell the police that they spoke to Hari at around 8:30 that same morning, but they've been unable to contact him since then, and he's made no effort to reach out to them. This is seen as very uncharacteristic of Hari, and his friends and family feared that he may have succumbed to the elements while he was out exploring. He was last seen leaving the lodge on the 31st of December, after which he was never seen again. When no one had heard from him by the 3rd of January, his family filed a missing person report. During the investigation that followed, it was determined that his cell phone had been switched off since the 31st of December. When his family contacted his roommates to ask if they'd heard from Hari, they stated that he was likely struggling to find cell reception in the area that he was traveling in, but it was later discovered that his phone had not been used for several days. The authorities kept an eye on his bank accounts and have reported that they've seen no activity since the day that he checked out of his room at the lodge. His friends and family assumed that he traveled to Alaska to do some sightseeing, but this remains speculation, as the true reason for his visit to the area remains unknown. He merely stated that he needed a vacation, and for reasons unknown, he decided that he wanted to spend the Christmas and New Year's break in Alaska. Hari does not own a car, and according to some sources does not have a driver's license. Hence, it remains unknown how he traveled away from the lodge, and since he's likely on foot, he could have walked in any direction, making it nearly impossible to determine a good starting point for a search to be conducted. Temperatures in the area fell to around minus 19 degrees Fahrenheit after Hari left the village, and since he was ill-equipped for such weather, his life might be in danger. The Fairbanks, Alaska State Troopers have asked that anyone who saw Hari after he left the lodge that day contact them at 907-451-5100, quoting case number AK2600000654. Number 2. The friends and family of 66-year-old Yi Pin Long are worried that something might have happened to her since she was last seen spending time next to a river before she suddenly went missing. Sources don't state where Yi was living in February of 2025, but it's known that she enjoyed hiking in the Meadview area of Arizona. That's what she was doing when she unexpectedly went missing. Yi had planned on going on a day of hiking in the Purse Ferry area, which is situated less than 10 miles from Meadview. A witness would come forward to tell the police that they saw Yi in that area at around 2 p.m. on the 2nd of February. She was on foot in an area where the Colorado River and Lake Mead meet, close to the border between Arizona and Nevada. Pierce Ferry lies on the Arizona part of the border, and it's not believed that Yi walked across into Nevada at any point during her hike, though it remains a possibility. She was supposed to return home later that same day, since she had planned on going on a short hike that would have taken her a few hours. But when she didn't make it home as planned, her family became worried that she may have gotten lost and they contacted the authorities. A missing person case was filed, and the Mojave County Sheriff's Office started an investigation. Not many more details are available in Yee's case, but it's known that searches of the areas where she was last seen were carried out, but with no success. And it's known that at some point, she was walking in the parking lot of the Pierce Ferry boat ramp, but her movements following this are shrouded in mystery. She's since been listed as an endangered missing person, and her family is anxious to receive news of her current whereabouts, but no further sightings have been reported. Since she was seen in the Pierce Ferry boat ramp parking lot, some people have suggested that she concluded her hike that day and was planning on leaving for home when she went missing, which would make her disappearance all the more baffling. The Mojave County Sheriff's Office search and rescue team scoured the area in hopes that Yee would be found quickly, but after several days, the search was called off when no clues as to her whereabouts could be found. Anyone who has information on where Yee can be found should contact the Mojave County Sheriff's Office at 928-753-0753, quoting case number 25004-153. Number 1. It's always a disconcerting detail in a missing person case when their vehicle is found abandoned with no clues as to their whereabouts, as was the case in the disappearance of 22-year-old Mortimer Wortman, known to his friends and family as Morty. In November of 2025, Morty was a student at Rutgers University in New Brunswick, New Jersey. He was studying agriculture and was on the verge of graduating when he went missing without explanation. Thanks to surveillance footage, it's known that Morty was in the parking lot of the regional day school in Jackson Township on the 21st of November. CCTV footage shows him getting into the car of Adam Saluk, with whom he was friends, at around 6 p.m. that evening. He was then seen by witnesses in a remote area, a wooded area close to High Bridge Road in that same spot, after which he was never seen or heard from again. The details of that night have left his family very concerned since he wasn't in a good mindset when he was last seen. Adam would contact the police at around 12 p.m. the next day, when he was unable to find Morty, and a missing person investigation was launched. He stated that while they were in the woods, he and Morty got into an argument, after which Morty decided to walk off into the woods against the advice of his friend. This happened at around 10:30 p.m., and the area was searched, but no sign of the missing man could be found. Rutgers University has stated that they're working closely with the authorities, and they remain hopeful that he will be located. It would only be the next day when his car was found empty and abandoned in the parking lot of Regional Day School. It should be noted that the school is located just a short distance away from Morty's mother's house. He was visiting his mother when he and Adam decided to take a trip into the woods. It's assumed they met up in the school's parking lot, after which they decided to travel into the woods in Adam's car, rather than take both vehicles. Adam added that they were in the Collier's Mill Nature Preserve when they got into a fight, and that he had no idea where Morty went after the pair split up. When the initial search failed to produce any clues, drones and search dogs were brought in to help, but no further progress was made as the dogs were unable to find Morty's scent. The investigation was handed over to the Ocean County Prosecutor's Office, and Morty's family feels that Adam should be considered a suspect since he was previously arrested in June of 2025 for threatening Morty with a sharp blade. During that incident, Adam struck the back of Morty's car with his vehicle and then intentionally scratched it, and he was about to attend court to learn his fate on December 8th, but the case was postponed for reasons unknown. Anyone who has information on where Morty can be found is asked to contact the Jackson Township Police at 732-928-1111. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked this video, be sure to hit that like button. Also, don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell to keep up to date with all of our future uploads. But my name is Ty Knotts, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.